You can call me stupid. Listen, you can call me sheep. You can say I'm lazy. You can say I'm weak. 'Cause I won't break, no, I know I won't wait. You're in trouble, Lee.
To WNBA Swish, I'm Sean Schultz.
Asia Cap Cop.
I'm Dar.
KBG here.
We're joined by our special guest, Olympic gold medal winning coach and WNBA champion, Dan Hughes. How are you, Coach?
I'm good, thank you.
Who was your favorite players and assistants to work with, and what stood out the most about them?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I will tell you that I've often been quoted as Breonna Stewart, I think, was the best basketball player that I coached, just by her ability to. She was an MVP and 218 the year I coached her and all that. I had so many good assistants. It would be literally impossible. When you think back to it, probably 10 or more have gone on to be head coaches in the WNBA. And I will tell you one of the really unique coaching situations, and it was certainly one of my best, was having Sandy Brondello and Ola Flang, who are husband and wife, now coaching at New York, on my staff. That was unique. That was fun. That was absolutely one of the best periods, I think, as far as us establishing, our culture and things. And they had a lot to do with that.
Outside of your championship year, where did you have, what was your most successful year of coaching outside that 2018 year?
219, no doubt in my mind. The next year, after the championship, if you look at all the events of that year, Sue Bird was out for the year. Breonna Stewart out for the year. Jewel Lloyd makes the All-Star team, but then gets hurt and misses about 6 weeks of the season. I had cancer. I literally coached in training camp, had cancer surgery, came back 9 games into the season. And we still went to the second round of the playoffs, won 19, 20 games. I can't remember what it was, but just the adversity that team faced and what they did with it, it's without a doubt, outside the championship years, the most fulfilling to me that team did what they did.
Was health the reason you decided to stop coaching, or was it just time to kind of move on to the next phase?
I think it was both. It wasn't so much health. The health situation got in the way in the bubble, where I couldn't get cleared to go there coming off of cancer at that point. But I was healthy. I think in a lot of situations, if you really, really are a coach and you've coached for 40 some years, it's hard to say when you're going to stop. It's just. It wasn't. I had a chance to turn the team over to a young coach, which has always kind of been my legacy. But I also had the Olympics coming up, and I could devote all my time to the Olympics. And what a great way to walk away from a coaching career, with a gold medal in the Olympics. So it was a series of a lot of things like that.
I think Noelle Quinn's doing at Seattle.
You're doing really good, and the thing that I'm very happy about is that I was just back to Seattle when Sue Bird had her jersey retired and all that, and the community has been well informed that she's in a building situation now, and they seem to be behind it in 100% to me. And that's good messaging by the team. That's also the job that I think Noe is doing. And they're on board. Okay, and watching Jewel Lloyd step forward and watching Ezzy. I'm so proud of Ezzy and kind of what she's doing in that regard. I think she's doing a good job, and I think the community has also bought in to, okay, we had some changeover in our team, and now we're giving that team a chance to grow. The new one that they're starting.
New practice facility opening up too.
Yeah, unbelievable. Going back to where we practiced back in the day, that will be amazing. Yeah.
What was it like when you guys practiced back then? What were the facilities like?
Well, it's Seattle Pacific, which is a wonderful university, but it wasn't the main court. They had an extra court kind of on the bottom, and it was great from the standpoint of privacy, and we had a very confined area, but it didn't have multiple baskets. It didn't have a lot of things that this new facility is going to. It didn't have all the. I also saw what the Aces have. I was out in Vegas. I just love where all that's changed. It's fine. I come from a day where our practice facilities were not as good. I'm just glad now these athletes have practice facilities that are really they're the type of facilities professional athletes need.
Yeah, like Candace Parker said, first time in her career she's had a locker with her name on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Coach, you were Sting, Rockers, early days of the WNBA. What would you like to see happening going forward to grow the league more?
Well, we just talked about some of them. I love the idea that there are better practice facilities for our athletes. I very much like the idea that I think people are coming in from ownership with money that they want to spend on our product. I've gone through years where it was all about, that particular year, making sure we made more money than we lost. These owners that I'm now seeing have the foresight to understand, to really grow the game. They got to come in and put some money in situations to help with the product. And I think they're seeing a return on that. And I really love that. I think the players have gotten better every year. I mean,
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Back in the beginning, I think some of those players were marvelous, but it's without a doubt that in my coaching career, I had to change defensive philosophies to handle the fact that these individual players were getting better and better and could beat you, if you didn't have a scheme to do that. Now, the one thing I'd like to see is a little, you mentioned the Sting, you mentioned the Rockers. I kind of wish we would embrace educating some of the people, nowadays fans, about those players. There were some amazing stories, just amazing stories that really need to be told about that time period, in the later 1990s and then into the early 2000s. I mean, people need to know who Andrea Stinson was, Vicky Bullitt was, who Susie McConnell Serial was. And I don't feel like sometimes we tell those stories well enough nowadays.
Right. Thinking along those lines, obviously it depends on the tools you have at the time you have them, but do you favor one type of defense over another? Like say zone versus man on man, or did you ever?
Well, from a beginning standpoint, as a coach, I started the defensive end. I was pretty average offensively, but I was pretty good defensively. And so I start from that standpoint, but I evolved to the point where I wanted to match the defense with my personnel.
Right.
If you look at the Cleveland Rockers, who probably still own an awful lot of the defensive records as far as points allowed and defensive field goal percentage and all those type of things. And then you saw my teams in Seattle, they played defense totally different. They were like that. And so I got to the point that I would change in kind of the style of defense or whatever. I played a lot of zone back in the day that other teams didn't play as much because we didn't have defensive 3 seconds. And then they added defensive 3 seconds, and my effectiveness out of the zone was never quite as good. I never quite mastered it. I think people are doing a better job of that now, but I was always kind of like trying to fit the personnel and the personality of the team to a defensive style, because I wasn't afraid to change that.
How does it feel to know that you are the coach that has the most victories in franchise history? How does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel good from the standpoint of I did that multiple times. It's one thing to go to a franchise and then to have a lot of success, and that's hard to do, yes, but it's really hard to go to multiple places and do that. And it's actually kind of nice that I can go back to certainly Cleveland, San Antonio, and Seattle and feel like it's got a little bit of feel of home. And I wasn't in Charlotte quite enough to maybe say that for sure there, but it still was a good period. But I love the fact that I can go back to those places, and in some cases I am, part of the story of success. But I just like the fact that it's still home to me. And I think as you get older in life, you ought to have as many homes as you can.
Amen to that.
Yeah, it's not always true as a coach.
I was also wondering, because I know that, you've been in the WNBA for many, many years, from the very beginning and stuff like that. And you've coached great players, players such as like Becky Hammon, Breanna Stewart, Sue Bird, having their leadership, having their input on the court, and, them being able to manage the team without, you having to say anything. Did they make your coaching a little bit easier as far as game time and stuff like that?
Yeah, no question. No question they did. But part of that journey that I had, I think, was creating a situation where I empowered them.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that when I was out it was Sue Bird and at her Jersey retirement, she was going through the years, and she got to, I think it was 218 in that era where I coached her. And she said several things, but one of the things she said was, "Coach, you empowered me." Well, that was my goal. I think my journey, and yes, I was very fortunate. Nobody on earth had a better set of point guards than I had to coach in my career. Nobody. I mean, male or female, I don't care. If you look at that 20-year run and you talk about Dawn Staley, and you talk about Susie McConnell-Syria, and you talk about Helen Darling, and you talk about Jennifer Rosati, and you talk about Becky Hammon, and you talk about Sue Bird, and you talk about Mariah Jefferson, and you talk about Tully Bevilacqua, and you talk about, and I don't mean to leave anybody out, but that arsenal of point guards were all cerebral. They all were different, but I wanted to empower them on the court, because I found in coaching, my secret sauce was that it was more powerful to have a player as a leader than it was for even me to be the leader.
We have the coaches challenge now, different foul rules. What do you think they've gotten right and wrong? Like, what would you like to also see moving forward rule-wise?
Well, I think they got it right in the coaches challenge. I enjoy that. I kind of wish I would have had that. I think they got it real wrong. But in the last 2 minutes of the game, they're not reviewing out of bounds plays that are contentious. I mean, that's just too pivotal. I think they got it wrong there, in regard to that. As I watched the evolution of the rules, I think the 24-second shot clock was a great rule. And at the time, I didn't know how to feel about it. We were 30, I think, at that point. But that's been a great rule. The defensive 3-second, I'm still a little torn on that one because I've coached internationally and you don't have it in FIBA rules. So I'm still not quite as much sure that's the best thing, but okay. At that point, I really, the last thing, and I'll say, and I'll pay a little credit to the officials and to the because I know they're taking a lot of heat at this point in the season. But they have done a better job with freedom of movement. You know, there was a period where it was very disturbing to me because our athletes couldn't move freely. There was chucking, there was upper body holding, there was all those kind of things. And I think they've done a better job of allowing players to move. And I think that's incredibly important in not only in running good offense, but it's terribly important to watch the beauty of the game. You know, the last thing you really want is something that becomes a physical struggle to move from point A to point B. And so I do think they've gotten better officiating and better kind of rule emphasis with freedom of movement.
We do fully retire from the game. What do you want your imprint on the game to be? What would you like people to talk about when they mention you?
My legacy to me, and I think people that are close to me know it, I wanted to live on in the people that I either coached or I worked with as assistants. I want my legacy to be that he empowered the next generation of coaches, that he empowered the next generation of players to go on and contribute into basketball. That's without a question. You know, it's nice to be a champion. I had to work. I had 16 years before I was a champion. So trust me, I know how precious that is. But still, my legacy to me would be what carries on in, you know, the coaches that did so much and worked with me, and now they're taking the game forward. The players that are now part of the coaching landscape, they're part of the ownership landscape. They're part of continuing basketball. That's the legacy that would matter the most to me.
What was your greatest memory in Cleveland and San Antonio? And what did you learn about either point guard you coached? Susie McConnell-Serio, the Becky Hammonds, the Dawn Staleys and Stu Bird. And are you surprised? I mean, and how proud are you of Becky Hammond and Dawn Staley as coaches?
That's a really good question. The thing I learned by being around a lot of those people that you mentioned, and I'll talk about Susie because sometimes I don't get to talk about her enough, but how brilliant they were in their minds about the game of basketball. And it was such that I wanted to put that on display. I wanted the team to know that, and I wanted the fans to know that. And take Susie McConnell-Serio. I had coached against her, you know, part of a year at Charlotte, and then I came, and I got to know Susie. Honestly, I got to know her. She was having surgery on her knee, and I think it was a knee. And the first time that I met her as her coach was in the operating room, and she was getting ready to have surgery, and her whole family was there, which is a basketball family, unbelievable basketball family. But the thing I learned about her and so many of those players was how tough they were. Tough, I mean, mentally, but tough also just physically. I mean, Susie was, I'm in the room and she had just come out of surgery and what have you. And I think her mother's in there, and I've got her whole family is involved in coaching basketball or officiating basketball or all those things. But Susie, I'm talking to her, and then finally she said, "Coach, you have to excuse me for a second." Well, she was getting nauseous from the after effects of the surgery, and she had spent all this time talking to me when she probably should have been taking care of herself. And that just shows you that that's a great example of how Susie was. And Susie, it was so interesting. She was the first in this line where I just gave her a lot of latitude with the team. You know, you need to lead us. You know, you need to do this. And a lot of them say to me, you know, we're not used to that kind of freedom. But Susie was the first that I just gave the freedom to be honest with you. And I'd learned that because the year before, Dawn Staley was my point guard. And she was unbelievable. And I thought, why am I trying to get in the way of Dawn? You know, and I hope I didn't, because we ended up doing well together. But I learned from Dawn to let them have freedom and to trust. Once you know a player has that kind of mentality at the point position, let them empower the team. Let them be the engine as opposed to me. You know, yeah, I'm going to jump in there, and yeah, they're going to have to deal with me occasionally. But it's far better if that point guard can develop that leadership style, you know, in those situations. And that was really true through a lot of the players, Becky, that you mentioned. For example, Becky really set me up to coach Sue Bird, because Becky had a lot of the same attributes that Sue had. And that was really a great learning ground. They're different in certain ways, but boy, again, you want to empower them. And I will be real celebrating the fact when I go to the Basketball Hall of Fame this coming year in Mohegan Sun, where Becky Hammon goes into the Basketball Hall of Fame. I think that is just one of the great stories that the WNBA and that certainly Becky it illustrates for our world, you know, how you can, in some cases, overcome starting a little bit from behind, you know, because Becky never had anything easy.
Which we won't take up more of your time, but we're very appreciative you joined us and answered our questions.
And
today.
I give a great call out for that fine shirt right there. I gotta tell you what, man, you made
Did it bring back memories for you, Coach Hughes?
it does, and I gotta tell you what, you made my day. I can't wait to get off this call and go tell my wife. I'm going to show you. Can we just stay here a second? Just
Yes.
Absolutely.
Score, Asia.
You were telling me
Great job, AJ.
that shirt.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Look,
he
there
got
it
the
is.
plug.
Perfect.
There you go. Just so you know that I kept it too. All right, but
That is too awesome.
it's been great fun. You all
Thanks, Coach.
keep promoting our great product. Okay.